Hi, this is Serena Maria Dope, and I have to do, it's called it's a no waste problem that I have to do for us on Earth, since I am the owner of everything, including your waste, right? Okay, so here we go. What I have is, I did it, I've already done it, went through it, but I have to say it. I want to record it so that energy can record the problem and understand that there can't be any waste in any of our energy, because that's what's making us sick, right? Okay, so here we go. I have absolute bar, through permanence, absolute bar through tangible, absolute bar through physical, absolute bar through real, REAL, absolute bar through absolute bar through honest, absolute bar through safety. And then over here I have total, but once the total I have no, absolute no. So it's absolute bar through total no, absolute no, absolute bar through, and then you come down here and you hit absolute bar through subtracts, absolute bar through, and then you come down here and it's absolute bar parentheses, subtraction sign parentheses, through absolute bar through absolute bar through activates. And I needed to have colon marks right there after activates. I'll put that there. So it's a colon marks. Absolute bars through. And then I have each individual canis major. And you can spell that C-A-N-U-S or C-A-N-N-U-S. Either way, it's canis major. So each individual canis major, that's totals, total, totalities, entireties, equals, equal, absolute, through absolute, equal, through absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bars through. And then down here I have on it, I have another box with no total on it. See, it's right there. Yeah. It's total no, absolute no through. Okay. And then we go to absolute parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bar through permanent, absolute bar through tangible, absolute bar through physical, absolute bar through real, absolute bar through absolute bar through honest, absolute bar through safety, absolute bar through absolute total no, absolute bar through absolute bar complete, through absolute bar through permanent, absolute bar through absolute bar subtracts, absolute bar through absolute bar parentheses, subtraction sign parentheses, absolute bar through absolute bar through activates, through absolute bar colon marks. through absolute bar, through each individual allergies. And that's equals, equal. Totalities, entireties, totalings, total. Absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bar, through. And I have another box with a total on the top of it. And underneath of it, absolute, total, no. Through absolute. Through absolute bar, through absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bar, through absolute bar, permanent, absolute bar, through tangible, absolute bar, through physical, absolute bar, through real, absolute bar, through absolute bar, through honest, absolute bar, through safety, absolute bar, through absolute, total, no, absolute bar, through absolute bar, through absolute bar, complete, through absolute bar, through permanent, through absolute bar, through absolute bar, subtracts, absolute bar, through absolute bar, parentheses, subtraction sign, parentheses, absolute bar, through activates, absolute bar, through color marks, absolute bar, through each individual, whatever makes us have allergies. Entireties, totalings, total, equals, equalings, equals, totals, and absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bar, through absolute, totals, no, through absolute bar, through absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bar, through absolute bar, through permanent, absolute bar, through tangible, absolute bar, through physical, absolute bar, through real, absolute bar, through absolute bar, through honest, absolute bar, through safety, absolute bar, through absolute, total, no, through absolute bar, through absolute bar, through complete, absolute bar, through permanent, absolute bar, through absolute bar, through subtracts, absolute bar, through absolute bar, parentheses, subtraction signs, parentheses, through absolute bar, through absolute bar, through activates, through absolute, through absolute bar, through color marks, absolute bar, through each individual beauty marks, equalings, entireties, totalities, totalings, totals, equals, equal, absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bars through, absolute bar through, absolute, total, totals, no, absolute through, absolute bar through, absolutes, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute through, absolute bar through, permanent, absolute bar through, tangible, absolute through, physical, absolute through, real, absolute through, honest, absolute through, safety, absolute through, absolute through, absolute through, absolute through, absolute through, absolute through, absolute, total, no, absolute through, absolute through, absolute through, absolute through, absolute bar through, complete, absolutely through, absolute bar through, permanent, absolute bars through, subtracts, absolute bars through, absolute bars, parentheses, subtraction side, parentheses, absolute bars through, absolute bars through, absolute through, activates, absolute through, absolute through, absolute colon marks, absolute through, each individual Google Drive, equalings, equals, equal, totalings, total, entireties, totalities, absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute through, absolute, totals, no, absolute through, absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute, through, absolute, permanent, absolutes through, absolute tangible, absolutes through, absolutes physical, absolutes through, absolute real, absolute through, absolute honest, absolute through, absolute safety, absolute through, absolute total, no, absolute through, absolute complete, absolute through, absolute permanent, absolute through, absolute bar through, absolute bar, subtracts, absolute through, absolute bars, through parentheses, subtraction signs, parentheses, absolute through, activates, absolute, colon marks, through absolute, through, each individual when we delete, quote unquote, when we delete, quote unquote, is what happens to our leftovers. When we delete something, we have leftovers. We think it's called malware. We're not sure, but anyways, that's what the problem is, for whatever that is. Each individual Totalies on that, entireties on that. Each individual. Total on that, totals on that, equals on that, equals on that, equal on that, entireties on that, totalities on that. Absolute bar, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute bars through. Absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute through. Absolute permanent, absolute through, absolute tangible, absolute through, absolute physical, absolute through, absolute real, absolute through, absolute honest, absolute through, absolute safety, absolute through, absolute total no, absolute through, absolute complete, absolute through, permanent, absolute through, subtracts, absolute through, absolute parentheses, subtraction signs, parentheses, absolute through, absolute activates, absolute colon marks, absolute through. Each individual waste in entireties, totalities, totalings, totals. Totalities, entireties, totalings, equalings, equals. The total. And absolute parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute through, absolute totals no, absolute through, absolute parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute through, absolute tangible, absolute permanent, absolute tangible through, absolute physical through, absolute real through, absolute honest through, absolute safety through, absolute total no, absolute through, absolute complete through, absolute permanent through, absolute subtracts through, absolute parentheses, subtraction sign, parentheses, absolute through, absolute activates through, absolute colon marks, absolute through. Each individual bowl, entireties, equalings, totalities, totalings, total, totals, equal, equals, absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute, through, absolute, totals, no, absolute, through, absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute, through, absolute, permanent, absolute, tangible through, absolute, physical through, absolute, real through, absolute, honest through, absolute, safety through, absolute, totals, no through, absolute through, absolute, complete through, absolute, permanent through, absolute, subtracts through, absolute through, absolute, parentheses, subtraction side, parentheses, absolute through, activates, absolute, colon marks, absolute through. Each individual biochemical weapon, entireties, equalings, totalings, totalities, equals, totalings, totals, entireties, absolute, parentheses, equal size, parentheses, absolute through, absolute, totals, no, absolute through, absolute, parentheses, absolute, equal signs, parentheses, absolute through, permanent, absolute through tangible, absolute through physical, absolute through real, absolute through honest, absolute through safety, absolute totals, no, absolute through, absolute complete through, absolute permanent through, absolute subtracts through, absolute parentheses, subtraction sign, parentheses, absolute through, activates, absolute colon marks, absolute through. Each individual ocean, atmosphere, paper contract, totalings, entireties, equalings, equals, totals, total, absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute, equal signs without parentheses, equal signs outside of parentheses, and quotation marks, and absolute, totals, no, absolutes, through, absolute, parentheses, equal signs, parentheses, absolute, through, absolute, permanent, absolute, tangible, absolute, physical, absolute, real, absolute, honest, absolute, safety, absolute, totals, no, absolute, through, absolute, complete, absolute, permanent, absolute, subtracts, absolute, parentheses, subtraction sign, parentheses, absolute, activates, absolute, colon marks, absolute, through.